Welcome, Dr. Kamani. Welcome to the Go Hard Chick podcast. I am thrilled to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here with my Spelman sister.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm really excited about this topic. I mentioned to you before we started recording today that this is something that I don't think we're really talking enough about, at least in my world. Black
hmm
women in toxic jobs. And I just love your YouTube channel and just how open
Thank
and
you.
and transparent you and a lot of the guests are. So I'm like a huge fan. I've been like binge watching. So
I
I'm not going to
appreciate that.
keep babbling, right? I want you to introduce yourself to the listeners. Tell them about who you are, what you do, and how you got into helping Black women survive toxic jobs.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Crystal. So my name is Dr. Kamani Norrington Sands. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I'm licensed in California. And I worked in an extremely toxic job for about 13 years before resigning. And when I was in the toxic job, I took a leave of absence because I was being harmed. And during that time, I started talking on YouTube because I knew they were trying to silence me. I knew all these things were happening. And for me, part of my healing was I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to be silent about it. And that's how my YouTube channel came to be. And then the more I started talking, the more Black women around the world started reaching out to me. And I realized how many Black women have some sort of history with a toxic job. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to use my experience to help Black women. And so I've merged my mental health background with my experiences as a toxic job survivor. And now I'm a toxic job liberator for Black women.
Oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. So, what types of things do you hear from Black women about their experiences in these toxic jobs? Like, why are we staying in these places? Why are
hmm
we
A number of
just
reasons.
coping?
One is yeah, yeah. So I think it's a number of reasons. One is social programming. We've been taught as Black women that we work really hard, that we have to work twice as hard to get half as much, that people are going to perceive us a certain way. All jobs are bad, right? So all this social programming we've been told, and to never let anybody run us out of a situation, a good job. And so then we stay. Then we start lying to ourselves and saying, oh, I got this. It's not that big of a deal. Or I'm not going to let them run me out of here. I'm not going to let them win. So we get into that mentality, but not recognizing that we're getting harmed in the process. So you're not winning anything, right? Because you're getting harmed, you're getting injured physically and or psychologically. So you're not winning. And when we're in these jobs, it's a toxic system. So the whole system's against you. You're not going to win. And so that's part of it. The other part is sometimes some of us start defining ourselves in terms of our job role or duty or title. And so if your identity is wrapped up into that, then it becomes hard to leave because you think about all you've sacrificed to get there, and if you don't have a work life balance in your life, work is everything to you. So it's all defining, it's all consuming. And I think sometimes we have people around us, family, friends, coworkers, who will say to us, stick it out. This is a good job. Don't let them run you out of here. Or if you leave, you won't be able to pay your bills. You're going to be homeless. So they start projecting their fears onto us. So there's a lot of different reasons why we might stay at a toxic job. And just the fear of, if I leave this job, how am I going to pay my bills realistically?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, all of those sound familiar to me.
Yes, they are
So,
so common. I experience those. The Black women I work with, it's common. Yes.
yeah. Now, I find your story very interesting. Can you share with the listeners as much or as little as you want about the toxic job you found yourself in and some of the things you were experiencing there?
Yeah. So we only have a certain amount of time, so we can't go into all of it. But, if people want to see, because I'm very transparent about my experiences because I'm not ashamed about it. And part of the toxicity of my healing now that I've left is getting this out of my system, right? So if people want to see more about my story, they can absolutely go to my YouTube channel, Lifting As We Climb Consulting Wellness Services. Also, Stephanie Perry did a very long interview with me where I went into detail about a lot of things that were happening. So that's her channel, Stephanie Perry. And then the title of the video is Black Women Leaving Toxic Jobs. So just briefly, I work for the second largest school district in the nation, clinical psychologist. The job started off as great. It was wonderful. I loved it. I had two Black women supervisors who were very supportive. I'm still close to them now. But when they retired, I knew I was in trouble because I had no protection. And sure enough, a lot of things happened after they retired. And it was a situation I could just overall just say I went from being a pet to threat. And I've talked about this on my YouTube channel. And just for your listeners to know, if they are not familiar with Pet to Threat, Pet to Threat was created by three Black women researchers, Dr. Juanita Johnson Bailey, Dr. Keisha Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps. Pet to Threat deals with when a Black woman comes into the workplace and she's sought out for her outstanding work abilities. She's doing well. They love her. She's the pet. And then she starts getting more attention, and then she shifts. It shifts in terms of how she's seen and treated as a threat. That is exactly what happened to me. So I went from the pet, oh, she can do this, she can do that, like put in leadership positions, promoted, sought out for my expertise, all these different things. And then over time, things started happening because I started becoming more vocal about things. I was calling out the dysfunction in the system. I was calling out things I was seeing with the workplace bully. I was advocating for Black kids in a district that's not predominantly Black. So all these things started happening, and all of a sudden I was demoted. So I went from, oh, this, right, never negative, to demote it without any clear reason except for your job is no longer a full-time position, which was ridiculous, right? So there was so many things that happened, but I still stayed, Crystal. I still stayed because I was committed to the work. And I was like, I was going to fight them and I was going to show them. I was going to go to human resources and report the bully. Joke on me, right? I didn't know human resources was really not there for me at all. And so through my experiences, very, very painful experiences, I want to be vocal to Black women to share with them lessons that I've learned. But for me, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So the more I kept saying, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to stay here, the longer and the more I experienced psychological and physical harm to the point where I had to take a leave of absence due to workplace stress, which is so ironic because I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm working for a school district helping kids in a mental health unit, and the mental health unit was harming me. So just the irony with that. But I'm so thankful that I was in therapy, a Black woman therapist, and just the support and the validation and encouraging me to leave. And I eventually left.
Now let me ask you this because I'm curious, and just hearing your story and hearing some of the other stories I've heard on your YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Were these spaces? Were you the minority in these spaces, in this work environment?
Um, okay, let's just say this. So in California and in Los Angeles, the demographics are a little different, right? So it's less about white, Black. It's more so in terms of the predominant population within the district is Latinx, right? So the
Okay.
people who are involved with Latinx. Now there was a white woman, right? But mostly Latinx people. And so the dynamic looks a little different. But, I tell this to everybody. It could be a Black person, a Latinx person, an Asian person. We're looking at white supremacist actions and behaviors, and that's exactly what was happening. So within that unit, it wasn't that many Black people. There were Black people, not that many. But again, it was the white supremacist types of behaviors.
Yes. Yes. Because just looking over my career as a lawyer, I've definitely experienced some toxic jobs. within a toxic career. And
Mm-hmm.
I've worked where, I mean, I've been in environments where I've been like one of two Black women, uh,
Mm,
or Black people, I should say. And
mm.
I've worked in environments where the whole office was Black. And I- unfortunately, in those Black spaces, it was toxic there too.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's a different level, right? So I've done videos on my channel about all skin folk and kinfolk. So issues of internalized oppression and how that plays
Yes,
out. And sometimes that's even more painful when it's another Black person, particularly another Black woman who's doing things to you, and you know she knows better, right? That's what makes
right.
it so difficult. Like, girl, you know how hard it is to get this job, and then you stepping on me like this. Yes.
Yes. And like you said, it can affect, because I mean, if I'm honest, I think that's why I was so drawn to your work.
Hmm.
My health, all of that became very much affected due
Hmm.
to being in toxic work environments.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's, and it just, and it, you're right, it doesn't get better.
No,
And I
it gets
found myself
worse.
just trying to cope and patch it up. And, first I'm taking anti-anxiety medication, so I can keep
Mhm.
reporting to this job every day,
Wow.
gotta
Wow.
prop
Yes.
myself up, but then God was like, "You're not listening." Then I got knocked with a autoimmune disease,
Oh,
the
wow.
stress. Right. And so
Mhm.
then it was like, okay, Crystal, you
Yeah.
can't keep
And
putting
I
a
think
band-aid on this.
exactly. And I think it's important. I appreciate us having this conversation. I hope Black women can hear what we're saying is that you have to pay attention to signs that the job is toxic and that it's harming you because if the longer you go, the sicker you get, right? So I started off with like my blood pressure was raising. Then I started gaining a lot of weight. Then my nosebleeds were like, I never had nosebleeds ever in my life, Crystal. Really bad nosebleeds, hair falling out. Like it was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Hmm.
Difficulty sleeping, dreading waking up, very sad, anxious, the gamut, right? And I think God was like, girl, you need to listen to what I'm saying. And, I've talked about this on my YouTube channel often is that, when I took that leave of absence and I had time to just breathe and just get clarity and start making my exit plan for how to get out. I was in the shower one day and I heard God say to me, if you go back to that job, it's a death sentence. Crystal, I got out that shower, I got dressed, and I resigned immediately, right? Because
Hmm.
the signs were there. But when I heard the voice of God say that to me, I was out. I'm like, I know that this is for real. Like, I really will die here. My therapist was like, girl, you got to go. All these people are telling me I got to go. But I think as Black women, we keep saying, I'm going to stay, I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight. And we get so concerned about finances, right? So if I leave this job, how am I going to pay my bills? I'm not going to get another job, even though I was a licensed clinical psychologist before I even started the job. So of course I can get another job. Of course I can have a private practice. Of course. But in our minds, we lie to ourselves and say, I cannot get another job. I'm going to end up homeless. We jump from one thing to the next with no data to support that, right? It's all fear based. And that keeps a
Yeah.
lot of us, so many of us, in toxic jobs.
So let me ask you about that, because you mentioned, and I saw a recent video on your YouTube channel about going from one toxic job to another. Why? Well, I don't know that we are purposely doing that, but I think maybe
Hmm.
that's fear based. Why didn't you leave that job and go to another? What made you just say, I'm done?
Oh, you mean like that the whole employer? Or do you mean,
Yeah, when you said God told you to basically leave,
hmm
what made you leave and not maybe wait until you got another job?
oh, because by that point, I had already started replacing my income because I
Okay.
was on a leave of absence, right? And during that leave of absence, I knew I was not going back. I knew that, right? So during that leave, I started exit planning. Part of my exit planning was immediately start replacing my income. So I thought about, okay, so if I'm a therapist, what's the easiest thing I can do to start replacing my income? I could start having therapy clients. And I pivoted to that. So that way, during my leave of absence, I was starting to generate income. And I was like, wait a minute. And then I started working with a financial psychologist in addition to other coaches to help me get my act together. And when I worked with a financial coach, who's a Black woman, who also is a clinical psychologist, when I was working with her, she made me confront my money fears and all that kind of stuff. And she was looking at my money, my expenses, and she was like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be more than okay. You need to go because you're losing money staying at that job. You're making more money in your private practice. So just go. So
Yeah.
that's how I was able to go. That's because I had money coming in. I'd already replaced my income.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be honest, that's one of my big issues is the money
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've been self-employed before,
Mhm.
and I don't know why I'm so doggone scared to go back out there again, but I'm just being transparent.
Yeah. It is scary. It's scary, especially when you're someone who likes structure and routine. Like, a certain day of the month, you're getting your money, right? So you're used to that. And I'm very much that person. However, it got to a point where it was so demoralizing that that experience stripped away my love for being a psychologist, right? And
Mhm.
so when I got away from that environment, I was like, oh, I do love being a psychologist, just not there with those people. And so if that means I need to work for myself, that means I have to work for myself because I will no longer tolerate people disrespecting me like that. I will no longer tolerate that. So if that means I have to deal with the uncomfortable feelings about being an entrepreneur, then right. But I have to look at the costs and the benefits. The cost of staying at that job wasn't worth it. Wasn't worth it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I got to that place in my own life, like I said, after, it's probably been a 15-year journey after, first
Mhm.
dealing with the anxiety and grinding my
Mhm.
teeth at night and can't sleep and I'm worried
Mm.
and stressed and the
Mhm.
weight gain. And then
Mhm.
having the autoimmune, diagnosis, it's
Mhm.
like, this is nuts. I
Yeah.
can't keep living
It's like a
like
progression.
this.
It's a progression, right?
Yeah. And for
Mhm.
me, when I was diagnosed with the autoimmune disease, it was 2020, right? A month before the
Mm.
pandemic hit.
Wow.
Um, I I quit that. I quit that job that I was in
Good.
because as I quit and I left in 2021 because I was trying to heal. I was trying to heal myself.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
knew if I
Mhm.
stayed there, the tremendous amount of stress, I
Mhm.
wouldn't be able to do that.
Good
And
observation. Yeah, you can't
yeah,
heal when you're constantly being attacked and abused. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the abuse, if I'm just being transparent, the firm that I work for wasn't so bad.
Mhm.
It was I did divorce work. So it
Mm.
was the opposing counsels yelling,
Mm.
the
Mm.
crazy clients yelling, the
Mm.
stress of people going through divorce. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, the
And
toxicity
it
wears
was,
off on you.
yes. And I
Mhm.
said, I can't keep doing this. Or
Yeah.
the next diagnosis is going to be worse.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
True. True. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on liberating yourself.
Thank you. But like I said, it's a journey. It's a
Yeah,
journey.
it is.
Um, and I'm constantly trying to figure out, well, what is best. But what do you
Mhm.
say? Because I see some women, well, I don't have it like that. I can't just quit my job.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like I need the money. We
Yeah.
all need the money.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but the women that think that they just can't do it, I guess you
Mhm.
alluded to it. It's the importance of finding help, getting help,
Mhm.
guidance, a
Mhm.
therapist, a money coach,
Mhm. Mhm.
um,
But the
so that
biggest
they
thing
can,
is your mindset. The biggest
yeah.
thing is your mindset because sometimes we're our own biggest barrier because we say those things to ourselves, we lie to ourselves, and we limit the possibility of even looking at options. So if you just say, I can't leave, I got to stay here, how do you know that? How do you know that you can't find another job? How do you know you can't replace your income? What data is telling you that, right? but that is a fear-based response. It's a fear-based response. So what I say to Black women is acknowledge the fear. You're going to feel the fear, right? That's the first step. I'm fearful. I'm scared. Okay. But what are we going to do to help you walk through the fear so you can start exploring your options? So I'm very clear when I talk to Black women, when I talk on my YouTube channel, I don't tell any Black woman to just up and leave a job and then everything gonna be okay, right?
Mhm.
Unless you're in immediate danger. So physically and or psychologically, you're about to have a nervous breakdown, you're like something really, really bad, yes, right? Otherwise, I talk to Black women about, okay, let's come up with a plan. Let's look at resources. How do you access resources? How do you develop the exit plan? I did exit plan and it worked out for me. I want to share that with you about how you can get out and do well.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your tips for Black women that are maybe they're working, they're trying to get out, but they're not ready yet?
Mhm.
How do they survive while they're working their plan?
That's hard. Okay. So, first, I would say just check in with yourself every day to see how you're feeling, right? So, if you're having physical and or psychological symptoms, please go get those checked out. I would absolutely say therapy, very important, particularly with another Black woman to help you reality test, help you validate what's happening to you. Because the danger is when you're in a toxic work environment, they're already gaslighting you, right? And
Mhm.
then the danger is when you start self gaslighting yourself and you're thinking, oh, wait, wait. And you get all up in your head, you get confused, you start going down rabbit holes, you start doing things that are just not healthy for you. So, therapy is a good place for you. The other thing, if you're in the job situation and you're trying to work on an exit plan, but you can't leave right then, coaching is very important because coaching will tell you about the next steps about what to do to get out. I would absolutely say the virtual summit that I'm hosting. So, the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women, which is May 18th and 19th. It will give you the tools about how to prepare and deal with your mindset and the tools about how to get ready to get out so you have an exit plan and check your circle of people you surround yourself with, right? So be mindful of who you share, what's going on
Mm.
about the job, because if you share that with people who are telling you to stay, that's not healthy for you. So think
Yeah.
about maybe limiting information you share with certain people, and then maybe get a different circle of people who will support you and maybe hold you accountable. So, okay, so what kind of things are you doing to try to explore your options, applying for other jobs, starting your but who are those people around you who will support you in liberating yourself? So that was it. Those
Yeah.
are the main things. And then also just say to yourself, um, this is what you're doing temporarily to make your way out, right? And that you're
Yeah.
making forward moving, you're making steps to get out, and that you're not stuck. You're not stuck because that can
Yeah.
make you depressed, right? You start feeling
Yeah.
stuck and helpless and hopeless. And I don't want people to feel that way.
Yeah. And that's true. I just had a discussion with a girlfriend today where I had to tell her she had to move in silence. She's not having
Like
an issue
Harriet,
with,
like
yeah,
Harriet Tubman. Okay.
yeah, her issue, it wasn't a job thing, but y- you know, I I think our friends and our families, for the most part, mean
Hmm.
well. But,
Yes.
you know, I've expressed to some people, well, for example, oh gosh, this job, blah, blah, blah. And the response I've gotten is, nobody's happy at their job. You just have to deal
Oh,
with it.
right? It's like to settle for a life of misery, which is so sad, right? And I
Right.
think that a lot of that is a generational thing, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people don't see options. And I keep quoting Glenn Mazzini, who said, check the tree before you pick the fruit. So if you're
Yes.
going to somebody who's miserable already, they hate their job, they're telling you to stay, they're saying all jobs are toxic, and they all just stay, don't pick that fruit. Go to another
Right.
tree.
Yeah. And find, like you said, find a community of people that have the open mind and kind of
Hmm.
think the way you do, that you
Hmm.
can share things with. Because it
Hmm.
really does liberate you if you can be around people that are open minded, that are trying to do
Hmm.
something different. And that's what I
Hmm.
was sharing with my girlfriend. Like now you can't share that information with those people, you know.
Yes, yes, yes.
You gotta
Lesson
find another
learned.
tribe. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
because it's tough because you mentioned family,
Mm-hmm.
societal pressures.
Mm-hmm.
I, I'm one of the first, I might be the only lawyer in my family. And so there's a lot of pride, coming from certain family members about that.
Yes.
So anytime I have expressed, for example, to my mom, like, gosh, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this level of disappointment. I'm
Mm-hmm.
stressed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but you got to prop yourself together, and so
Yeah.
you feel that pressure.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this,
Mm-hmm.
because this just popped in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
How do you have tips? Only way I could think about this is from the context of a lawyer, maybe a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you go to school all these years, you
Mm-hmm.
you get this degree, it
Mm-hmm.
comes with a level of, I don't know, prestige maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to do it anymore. You're
Mm-hmm.
done.
Mm-hmm.
But you feel this burden, this stress, this, you know, guilt or whatever coming from society, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't quit.
Hmm.
How do you, just because it's prestigious or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what do you suggest? How do you tell people to deal with that, walking away from that job or whatever? It could be a
Mm-hmm.
prestigious firm or prestigious
Mm-hmm.
job, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you feel this burden
Yeah.
to stay because of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. But part of the burden, I think it's important to process. I think it's hard to do it on your own. I think it's important to do that in therapy. Is there's a grief process. There's a grieving of the
Mm.
loss of your profession.
Mhm.
Maybe the dreams you had about becoming an attorney or whatever that profession is. So you had all that you dreamt about, all that you committed to, all that stuff, and you saying goodbye to those dreams. So the grieving needs to happen because
Mm.
then you are able to walk through the whole process of what that was like for you, even if there were maybe parts about your job you did like, and now you're saying goodbye to that, or saying goodbye to people seeing you in a certain way because you have a certain position. So that's the one thing. The other thing is reminding yourself that you are living for yourself. You're not living for how other people see you. You're not living for how people might hold you to a certain esteem. You are living your life for you. If it doesn't feel good for you, if it doesn't feel, then you have to make decisions for yourself. And there might be times, like for me, like I said before, when I was at the toxic job, I started thinking because of the toxic job that I no longer want to be a psychologist, right?
Mhm.
But once I left, I was like, wait a minute, it was that place. So
Yes.
sometimes it might be divorcing, excuse me, divorcing yourself from a location, and that might change how you view a situation. Or it might be, well, I don't like this part of law, but I like this part of law,
Right.
right? There's other things that I can do. And I had to say to myself too that even though I'm no longer working for the school district, I'm still helping kids another way on a higher level. So think about what are the ways you could still do the work if it still feels good to you and you still love it. What are some other ways you can still do the work, but maybe not at that location? That's not the only place where you can do that work.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You have to have an open mind and
Mhm.
be, I guess, creative.
Yeah.
Can you create something that's
Yeah.
different?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
I
I
want,
think
could
that the
you?
importance of options, options,
Yes.
options. We have
Yes.
options. We have agency. We can move. We have choices, right? Yes.
We do. Yeah. Well, could you mention this? And I don't want to forget, but I want you to tell the listeners about your Liberation Virtual Summit coming up,
Yes.
because I'm going to attend.
Yes. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited. So Marissa Price and I are co-hosting the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women. It's May 18th and 19th. Early registration is going on now until April 20th. So if you want to save some money, get your early registration in. But the summit really deals with helping Black women process the mindset stuff, right? So Stephanie Perry's our kickoff speaker. She has the book Job Detox coming out. dealing with that mindset stuff that keeps you feeling like you're stuck there, right? So
Mhm.
detoxing yourself from all that stuff. We're also going to talk about if you want to explore severance, right? So not leaving any coins on the table. We're going to talk about ways that jobs can rob you of your dreams and your joy. How do we reconnect to that as Black women? We're also going to learn about ways to replace your income, multiple streams of income, what to do about your life insurance, your health insurance, your retirement. So all the big barriers that keep us stuck in a toxic job, I was like, okay, if those are the barriers, let's address those and find out how do we navigate around them so you don't feel stuck in a toxic job. So by the time that someone leaves the summit, they can decide, okay, I want to go to a different job and or I want to create my own business because we're going to talk about that, creating your own business. So it's a lot of information that really will transform how you come into that space and how you view your life. But we want Black women to feel liberated, right? We want you to feel like, okay, I got this. I have support, and we're there to walk along with you as we're sharing the information with you. So we're super excited about it. And it's a very empowering, position to think that for so long, many of us have felt stuck, but we're like, no, there's a way out, right? So we're channeling Inner Harriet, and we want everybody else who comes to the summit to channel their Inner Harriet too, and to let you know too, Crystal, that um, because as Black women, we've had so many encounters of people doing things to us or whatever that sometimes we feel the need to be very private. And so we are really honoring our privacy, and participants are not going to have their cameras on. So you can't see anybody. Nobody's name's going to be listed. So I don't want people having concerns about people going to find out I'm trying to leave. Nobody will know, right? You could still come and get the information and nobody will know. But I just want Black women to be able to access resources that I wish that I had when I was in that toxic job,
Yeah.
but I didn't. So this is my way of healing, continuing to heal, because I'm still healing from that toxic job, even though I left 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But how do I reach back and help other Black women and uplift them in the process as well?
Yeah. And you mentioned like that the fear of the health insurance and the
Mhm.
retirement, that's
Mhm.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is huge. So I'm glad that amongst all the other great things you guys are going to be discussing, that's in that piece. So Go Hard Chick listeners, you need to I'll have the link and everything in the show notes. You need to register for this. I'll be in the room. You may not see me, but because I just want to be there amongst like the conversation
Mhm.
amongst Black women
Yes.
has just we don't I feel like we don't talk about that enough. We talked about that before we started. I
Mhm.
just feel like well, your platform obviously you are,
Mhm.
but there's so much we need to be talking about as
Yeah.
women and sharing if you're comfortable, of course.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's why I do this podcast, because I wanted to get to as many women as I could,
Mhm.
just valuable information about your health, your
Yes.
wellness, and our jobs take up so much of our lives. We're
Mhm.
there at least 8 hours a day, 5 days a
Mhm.
week, some of us more. And if we're unhappy,
Mhm.
that can really affect all other
It's
aspects.
all consuming. And Crystal, let me say a few things about that. So, one
Mm-hmm.
is it's not just the time you spend at a job. Just think about the amount of time you're thinking about the job. So before
Yes.
you go to the job, I used to talk, and I did a video about this yesterday about the Sunday scaries. So
Yeah.
Sunday would roll around, I'd be like, oh God, I don't want to go back there. And so many Black women talk about that, the Sunday scaries. So all that time, right? The time you're trying to prepare yourself to go to a job. So my alarm would go off and I would be filled with dread, like, oh my God, I have to talk myself out of the bed. And okay, then after work, then I'm still processing what happened. And then when I'm trying to sleep, I'm thinking about what happened that work day and I can't go to sleep. So think about all that time, weekend, the whole thing, right? And then when you think about the jobs are spilling over to your personal life, because now you're talking
Yes.
about the job all the time. So your friends know about your job, your family knows about your job, and it's like it affects them too because they're seeing you being harmed and then that hurts them. Then they feel helpless and hopeless, right? So I did a video about that. And then when you think about the physical, I'm not even talking about the psychological, the physical toll that the stress has on you, all that cortisol is impacting your body. And I've had
Hmm.
Black medical doctors talk about that. That's very dangerous, right? And as
Yes.
Black women, we're seeing now research is coming out that we're now dying at earlier ages. We're
Yes.
developing cardiovascular disease earlier. We're impacted by all these different issues. And we have seen, Crystal, also a number of high profile Black women who've been dying, either
Yes.
at the job or in relation to the job. So the physical and the psychological. So we know about Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Candia Bailey. So these
Yes.
are all warning signs to us, like wake up calls. And I remember when I was at the toxic job previously, there were people who were not that much older than me, Black women, not that much older than me, and they were dying. They were dying. They were developing heart attacks, strokes, cancer, like all this stuff. And I was like, ooh, ooh, this is serious, right? So we cannot ignore these things. It takes a toll on us. And then there's something called weathering. So weathering deals with when you're in a stressful environment, it can cause your organs to age prematurely. So we may not know what's happening to us because of the stress, but again, all these things are very, very, very dangerous. And what I want for your listeners to hear is that we're highlighting about all these problematic things, but I hope you can also hear that you have options. You don't have to stay there. There's so many Black women who've left toxic jobs, and I've done a whole bunch of videos on my YouTube channel. Not one Black woman ever said she regretted leaving. Not one.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah.
And they're all
And
doing well.
you are so right, because I see it around me, my
Mm-hmm.
colleagues, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them are younger. Cancer,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, strokes,
Mm-hmm.
and I know what it is.
Yeah, it's stress.
Yeah.
It's stress. Yeah.
Yeah. I know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Um, so we've got to. That's why I love your channel. I love what you do. You're helping
Thank
us,
you.
helping ladies, get out the word that if that is the issue, if you don't have to stay there, you
Mm-mm.
know.
Mm-mm. And not only do you not have to stay there, there's other ways for you to make money. So don't
Yes.
feel like if you leave that job that you won't be able to pay your bills, you'll be homeless. Like those worst case scenarios. No, you're a planner. You got that job. What makes you think that you can't get another job?
The
What makes you think that?
my therapist says I catastrophize. That's me. Like I go
Yes.
from I quit and I'm going to be homeless.
That's so many of us. That's so many of us. And then, like I said, our family and friends say that to us too. So we're
Yeah.
dealing with that catastrophizing for ourselves, and then they're projecting their stuff on us too.
I had when I quit my job before I started my private practice years ago. My boss at that job, when I told her I was leaving and I was starting my own office, she said, "You're going to starve."
Wow.
I'm still eating. And I
Wow.
remember
You
I
talk
was
about a
scared to
dream
death.
killer.
Right. I
Oh
was like,
my
screw you,
God.
lady.
Yes.
But I remember months in, and I'm like, I'm still able to buy food, lady.
Yes. I'm doing well. I'm doing well, right? Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. So people will say that and they'll scare you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, you
Mm-hmm.
started your own practice, so why would you think I couldn't do it?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm glad you didn't listen to her.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kamani. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up this episode?
I just want Black women to register for the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women. Again, early registration is going on now until April 20th. So get your ticket ASAP. So you don't forget, because I know we're all busy. We're like, oh, I'll do it, I'll do it. And you're like, dang it, I forgot to do it. Okay. Just do it. Just do it.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise.